Hello, everybody, and welcome again to Nerd to the Third Power, your one-stop shop for all things nerdy and awesome. I'm your host and master of ceremonies, Dr. Gonzo. With me, as always, in this epic quest of awesomeness is our resident anime goddess, the Cat. Cat, how are you doing this week?
I am staying afloat. For those who don't know, the state of Missouri is mostly underwater right now. 3 levees in my county have broken. And one of them is near, actually, one of my workplaces. So me and my coworkers were wondering if the people who, live on these farmhouses that are currently, residing on little islands in what is now lakes, could we, get some canoes or some kayaks or something and, take pizzas out to them and get paid for that, and we'll call it Canoober Eats? I'm glad you're amused by one of the worst puns I've ever made.
Well, the thing is, it was the execution. A good pun comes out of nowhere, but it's the bad ones that you've got to set up for 20 minutes. But yeah. Did you just make that up on the spot, or have you been sitting on that one for a while?
We were joking about it all day at work. We were trying to come up with other really good ones, but nothing quite took the cake the way that one did. That one, just the one that's stuck in my head.
Oh man, that's great. That's great.
Canoober Eats. Feel free to use that one, guys, if your state is also underwater.
All right. Well, we got a fun show for you guys this week. We're discussing Godzilla, King of the Monsters. Yes. Mike unfortunately is not with us this week. His wife Blair had a car accident, and so he's busy taking care of her and all the fallout with that. So we wish them both the best and hope that everybody's all right. And Skyblaze is buried under pre-E3 prep for her job, so we hope that she managed to survive that avalanche, because E3 is next week, so in a couple weeks we're going to have our E3 blowout show and talk about all the fun stuff there. But of course there is procedure to follow this week, so we're going to begin as always with Ask a Geek. And Kat, I got a question here that I think you'll really enjoy. This one comes from Rick. This one comes from Rick, and he asks if you've seen the Good Omens Amazon series.
Oh yes. I actually just finished it last night, as of the day that we're recording this show. A couple of days to get through it because I had other things I really wanted to watch as well. But I have been a fan of Good Omens for probably a good solid 12 years now. It's my favorite book. It has been since the day I read it. And I have long dreamed of a movie or television series. I had mentally cast a bunch of people in my head as my dream cast, and absolutely none of them were in it. But that's okay, because the cast was amazing. And I had loved the radio drama that they did a few Christmases ago, 3 or 4 years ago. They did a radio drama that I really enjoyed. But this really blew me away because it's so faithful to the spirit of the book. It gave me every scene that I wanted from the book was in the show. And it was the right amount of a little bit cheesy, as you'd expect out of maybe something from the BBC. You'd expect something a little bit campy. While being, like the book, very deeply meaningful, wrapped up in a bit of satire and sarcasm.
Yeah, this is David Tennant and Simon Pegg, isn't it?
It is not Simon Pegg. My God, if it was Simon Pegg. It is, I believe his name is Michael Sheen? Something Sheen? I'm way blanking on it right now. I think it's Michael Sheen is his name, and I've never seen him in anything else besides this. And my dream cast for that character had always been Martin Freeman, because he is this slightly campy British, white British guy who's always overwhelmed by everything, and I'm Martin Freeman's typecast. I would have loved that, but that's okay. Mark Sheppard would have been a great Crowley, but Supernatural happened, so he didn't need to be Crowley because he was already Crowley in something else. But yeah, the cast was absolutely stupendous. Nick Offerman I did not recognize at all in it. John Hamm was really great. Just everybody was great. Even the kids who were in it were great. Child actors are so hit and miss sometimes, and even the kids were really, really entertaining.
Okay, all right. All right. So for those of us who haven't read Good Omens, can you give us like a brief summary of what it's about?
Absolutely, because I love describing it. The plot, more or less, is that at some point, the Antichrist will be born. He will come into his power, and then Armageddon will start, and it'll be a war between heaven and hell. And in order to sort of prevent that, an angel named Crowley a demon named Crowley and an angel named Aziraphale, who actually really don't want the world to end. They really like it. They decide they're going to get together and they're going to ally themselves and circumvent Armageddon. And the problem is that they lose the Antichrist. And so instead of the Antichrist growing up under their tutelage, the Antichrist grows up in a totally normal human existence in like a small town in England, and with no heaven or hell influences like he should have had. So the story is when the Antichrist, whose name is Adam, is about to come into his power. It's like his 11th or 12th birthday or something like that. I don't remember. But it's past his birthday. He should be coming into his power. Armageddon's going to start. He's supposed to get a hellhound. The four horsemen of the apocalypse are supposed to show up, and nothing goes right. And so the demon and the angel are scrambling around, trying to ward off the powers that be from finding out that everything's gone wrong, and then stop the end of the world.
So you said the demon's name is Crowley?
Yes, it's Crowley.
Okay, I have to ask, because I'm a metalhead, is his theme in the show Mr. Crowley by Ozzy Osbourne?
It is not, unfortunately, because the entire show is basically a long Queen soundtrack, which is actually amazing. I think every episode has at least one Queen song in it. And it's always Crowley driving around this really beautiful, old, like 90-year-old big black car, and then blasting Queen. And it's really funny because the other demons don't spend a lot of time on Earth, and they don't understand cars, they don't understand phones, they don't understand traffic or anything. And Crowley just really loves living on Earth and his earthly life, and so does Aziraphale, and they're just hilarious. It's really important for this particular material to have two really stellar actors to bounce off of each other, because like this is two friends who are practically a couple, and they have to have the right balance of good, evil. There was a lot of David Tennant channeling Bill Nighy at times. Oh, that was so good. You should watch it. I think you'd enjoy it.
Oh, maybe I'll pick it up at some point. Because I am kind of with the Orville on hiatus. I am looking for something to occupy my my TV viewing time.
It is only 6 episodes. They all did drop at once, so it's a quick, like, you could do it on a Saturday, breeze through it real quick. And there are apparently, I haven't caught them all yet, but there are apparently tons of Doctor Who Easter eggs in there.
Oh, I'll have to check it out then. All right, and let's see. This next question here is for me, and this one comes from Mary, and she asked, with E3 coming up, what are the top things that I want to see? And so I'll just give, in brief, the top 10 things I want to see from E3. Number 1, I want information on the rumored Switch Pro, the high-powered enthusiast model of the Nintendo Switch that Nintendo's been tossing rumors about for the last few months. Number 2, I'd like to see the next planned Super Smash Bros. DLC character. I'd like to find out who that's going to be. Number 3, I'd like a Death Stranding trailer that actually makes some goddamn sense. I love Hideo Kojima to death. I love every one of his games that I've played, but Jesus fucking Christ, the man cannot cut a trailer to save his life. Number 4, I'd like to see Nintendo announce that they're going to be expanding the Switch Online game library. There's no reason at all that we don't have at least Super Nintendo and N64 games on there, as well as just regular NES games. Number 5, I'd like a reason not to sell my Xbox One, because I've had that thing now for 2 years, so I only have one game for it, and that's the Rare Replay Collection. Microsoft needs to fucking get their shit together. Number 6, initial pricing and possible launch titles for the PlayStation 5. We got another new console generation coming up, so I'd like to get some more concrete details on that. Number 7, a reason to give a shit about Google Stadia. I've seen absolutely nothing about that has piqued my interest. It just seems like OnLive 2.0, and I have just no interest whatsoever in it so far, so Google needs to wow me. Number 8, this one's kind of a bit of a joke, half joke, half not. I'd like to see if Tommy Tallarico is serious about having an Intellivision booth at E3, or if he's going to have like a little tent and lemonade stand out on the street corner like the Ouya guys did a couple of years ago. Number 9, this one's a bit of a pipe dream. I'd like to see one big final tentpole release for the 3DS. I kind of feel like that's going out on kind of a whimper, and I'd like to see one final big major release come out for it to see it go out with a bang. Because even the Wii U went out with Breath of the Wild, so I feel like since the 3DS had carried Nintendo for so long, it deserves one final last hurrah. And finally, number 10, I want a release date for Animal Crossing Switch. The last thing we heard about it was was in December of 2018 when they announced that or not even December, like October or something, when they announced that Isabelle was going to be in Smash Brothers, and they kind of caboosed an announcement for Animal Crossing with that. That's literally the last thing that we heard about. So I would like to hear some more details about when that's going to come out, because I want me some Animal Crossing. So hopefully I'll be able to check some of those off of my list next week. So we'll find out in our E3 show if I get bingo. So that's all the Ask a Geek questions that we have for this week. Thank you as always for sending them in. As always, you can send them to us through the email at drgonzo@nerdtothethirdpower.com. We love getting your questions, love reading them on the air, so send those questions in, and you might get yours answered on the show. And so with that, now we're going to move into the meat of this episode, and that is Godzilla King of the Monsters, a sequel to the 2014 Godzilla film, which if you go back and you listen to that episode where we reviewed that film, I think we found it to be kind of pretty average, kind of light on the monster action, which this movie has sought to fix that problem. So we're going to go ahead and talk about that. And I know I for one certainly enjoyed it. Kat, what did you think about it?
I went in for Smashy Smashy Monsters, and I got Smashy Smashy Monsters, and they were amazing, and I was so very pleased.
So anyway, those are kind of our general broad. Well, I mean, let's go ahead and get a little more detail in there. So let's open up with our general thoughts on the film. So, Kat, in a little more broader perspective, what are your general thoughts on Godzilla King of the Monsters?
I think going in, it wasn't on the top of my list of things I wanted to see, but I rewatched the trailer a couple times and got a little more excited. I don't know shit about Godzilla, to be perfectly honest. I've seen a couple films, but I don't have any particular, I have to think of the right word. I don't have any particular interest in it, in any of the passion? Big. Yeah, I'm not particularly passionate about them. It's just sort of like a passing fancy that I might watch one. But I do want to see giant monsters smash stuff, because I did enjoy Pacific Rim to an insane degree. And that's kind of what I was hoping to get out of this film was, if nothing else, I want to watch big oversized things fighting other big oversized things. And I had already heard, some reviewers saying, well, there's not a lot of people presence or the story isn't that strong. And I thought, I don't care. I just want to see giant monsters fight each other. So imagine my reactions when giant monsters are starting to fight each other. It was very, very satisfying.
Alrighty. So, I'm gonna swing back to something you brought up. The trailers for this movie have been masterfully cut. My favorite's the one they use that kind of epic version of Somewhere Over the Rainbow. That's, I think, the best trailer I've seen in the last like 5 or 6 years. Like, that was just a masterfully cut trailer. Hideo Kojima could take some lessons from that trailer. I really enjoyed this movie. I'm not a huge Godzilla fan, but I do enjoy, like Kat, I enjoy big things smacking around other big things. And I was actually really hyped for this movie again because of those trailers, and I was not disappointed by this film. And although I was kind of, like I said, in the 2014 Godzilla film, I was kind of, disappointed at the kind of the imbalance between the human characters and the monsters. I feel like this film struck a much more even balance between the two, actually. So we'll go ahead and get into that as we discuss the plot of the film. And I'm sorry, Kat, you sound like you were about to say something.
I was, but we can actually get to it in a bit because it is about the balance of people to monster screen time.
Okay, all right. So do you want to give the plot synopsis, or should I?
You go ahead and do it because I don't have a Wikipedia pulled up with any of the characters' names.
Okay, so the plot of this movie. This movie is actually a direct sequel to the 2014 Godzilla film, and we find out in this film's opening that as the events of the first film were happening, there was a family that was caught in the disaster at San Francisco, and it was a husband, wife, and 2 children, and they wound up losing their elder son in that disaster, and this has caused kind of a rift in their family. You have the parents are 2 scientists. The father is Dr. Mark Russell, who's an animal behavior and communication specialist who used to work for this organization called Monarch, which was actually tracking monsters like Godzilla and the Muto, or as they call them in this film, Titans. I was kind of a little disappointed they didn't call them Kaiju, but I guess can't have everything. And the mother is Dr. Emma Russell, who's a paleobiologist who's still working for Monarch. And then they have their surviving daughter, Madison Russell, who's played by Millie Bobby Brown, who I will gush about her when we get into the cast because I thought she was great in this movie.
Same.
And there's, in the wake of the Godzilla versus Muto fight, there's this push by the government to either find a way to corral or destroy the Titans, and Monarch is opposed to this. And the film opens up with Emma and Madison studying what turns out to be the egg for Mothra. And Emma has developed this device called the Orca, which can actually be used to communicate with and control, well, maybe not control, but maybe sort of aim the various Titans. And at the start of the film, she and Madison are taken hostage by an eco-terrorist group who seek to unleash the Titans and bring about, major environmental change, because eco-terrorists going to do what eco-terrorists do. And Mark who has left Monarch and kind of screw this, I'm out of here after the death of his son, is brought back into the fold to work beside Dr. Sarazawa, played masterfully by Ken Watanabe. Again, we'll gush about that when we get to the cast. To try and find out what the eco-terrorist plan with the Orca is, and where Emma fits into all this thing, and how they can prevent the destruction of human civilization. And it turns out that the plan for the eco-terrorist is to unleash King Ghidorah, who is buried in an ice floe underneath Antarctica, and his awakening causes all kinds of nasty bullshit. As it turns out that he's actually a living version of the Orca. He is sort of the alpha to the other Titans, and so he winds up awakening all the other Titans in the world. And in typical Godzilla movie fashion, it turns out the last hope for humanity is to actually, go to Godzilla and say, hey, turn him loose and let him go. But the government manages to fuck that up by deploying an oxygen destroyer that temporarily, we think kills Godzilla. So they have to find a way to revive Godzilla so that he can go beat down on King Ghidorah, become the king of the monsters again, and save humanity. And there's lots of building smashy and rory and fire breathy shooty action, and it's all just totally wonderful. So let's just start breaking this film down to component parts. So, Kat, what did you think of the plot of this film?
The plot was all right. There wasn't anything particularly terribly wrong with the plot line itself. There was obviously characters being really dumb. But to go back onto the difference between the balance of people to monster in this film versus the previous Godzilla film, this did people so much better because the story made more sense this time. So in the previous Godzilla film, which was just called Godzilla, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so in Godzilla, you had one military dude who is constantly just in the line of fire with these monsters, and it is like an improbability that even somebody who is watching a Godzilla film is not willing to believe.
You could, yeah,
Like,
you could go to Vegas on those odds and lose horribly.
like we're like there's a suspension of disbelief, and if I'm willing to believe that these giant monsters are real, but I'm not willing to believe that this guy can be in this fucking scenario and this fucking scenario and this fucking scenario over and over and over again unintentionally, then that's wrong. That's bad writing right there. He can't coincidentally be under the monster's foot every single scene. It's just ridiculous. Here, they were like, we need these characters to be near the monsters so that we can see we, the audience, can see the monsters every single time one of them's out. And they did a really creative thing by making sure that there was a reason for people to be there. A reason for our main characters to be going to all of these places where the monsters are so that we could have a reason to, as the audience, to see it. And so I thought that was just such an improvement in terms of storytelling. I don't know that it was necessarily the most believable thing in the world, because the characters, I don't think that people are really that dumb, but it's okay because I was willing to believe it in order to watch big monsters go boom.
I also really enjoyed the balance, not just between people and monsters in this film, but also between the individual characters. I feel like one of the things that I really didn't like about the first Godzilla film was they did kind of this bait and switch where they were like, okay, well, Bryan Cranston's character is going to be the main character, and they focus all on him for the first third of the movie, and then suddenly it's all about his son, the military guy, basically playing Chase the Monster. And there's not really a whole lot of character arcs, but they were every major character in this film got to have an arc, got to have some scenes where they did something important. And there were some really at least to me, some great character moments, and some of which that were particularly heartbreaking. Like the one that stands out to me, and was also, I feel, a great callback to the original 1954 Godzilla film, was where they discover Godzilla's sort of hideaway in. They never call it Atlantis, but come on, we know it's Atlantis. And he takes the nuclear warhead in to blow it up to revive Godzilla, which I thought was a great callback to the original 1954 Godzilla, where the scientist, who's also named Serizawa in that film, takes the oxygen destroyer to Godzilla's hideaway to destroy him. And we get this beautiful moment where Serizawa, who has been championing Godzilla and the Titans throughout this film, finally gets to come face to face with Godzilla, and actually gets to have this, this beautiful little kind of, I've searched for you my whole life, and now I'm finally here, and this is everything I've worked towards moment, which I feel like Watanabe pulled off beautifully. And I feel like every character in this movie got to have a moment in the sun and a time to shine. The one character that I didn't like, and I may catch some heat for this, the one character that I didn't like was the mother, Emma, and here's why. If you go back to our Voltron season 7 episode, you'll know that I have an extreme distaste for the I'm going to betray everybody to the bad guys because I'm a self-righteous zealot who knows better than everybody trope. And that was pretty much Emma's character in this movie. Her whole plot in this movie, it's revealed that she's actually working with the eco-terrorists, and she approached them to unleash the Titans because, their presence and their movements leaves this radiation that revives, plant life and shit. And she basically, throws all of human civilization under the bus to be a green eco-terrorist. And I until the very last 20 minutes of the film, she holds this self-righteous, I know better than you. This is what has to happen, and I don't really fucking care what happens to the rest of human civilization as long as me and mine are all right. And I absolutely hate that trope. And the only thing that I really liked about her character was that it was a twist on where they were setting it up. One of the things in these movies that you see a lot is, oh, this disaster happened that killed one of my kids, and it's going to send me off the deep end and make me into a total asshole. And so often in these movies, it's the dad that does that. And they kind of set it up that Mark was going to be, and they kind of set it up in the beginning of this film that it was going to be Mark who went off the deep end, and that's why he's no longer with Monarch. But no, it turned out to be the mother in this case, proving what I've said for years, that women are just as capable of being dill holes as men. But I absolutely, like I said, I hate that self-righteous, I know better than everybody zealot character. And that was basically Emma's character in this film. And I was like, you know, when she had her heel face turn at the end of the movie, I was kind of shouting at the screen like he did at Voltron. I was like, no, you don't get a happily ever after. You've murdered millions of people with your plan here. No, you don't get a happily ever after.
See, I don't think her heel turn was at the end of the film, though, because she quickly went, oh, this is not what I intended. And she's trying to tell the eco-terrorist, like, oh, we've got to figure out a way to, I can fix this. And he's like, no, you made your bed, now sleep in it. And I liked that he was the one just going, what are you talking about? This is what you wanted, just because it's not going your way. So I think she was just like instantly like, oh shit, like very regretful, because there was definitely a scene of her watching mass destruction, looking very distraught about it. But again, I don't really feel bad for her character at all, because she just got millions of people killed.
Hey, buyer beware.
Buyer beware. One of my hangups with the story was that Ghidorah was from space? Question mark.
That actually is canon to the original Ghidorah character. He was in the.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. It's that it was never again. They were like, we need it felt like they wanted a reason why everything that they came up with wouldn't work, and they were like, okay, it'll be for this reason. And like, I would think that realizing that Ghidorah was a creature from space would have huge implications. But, I mean, clearly there was a lot going on, and maybe they just didn't have time to process it, but I get the feeling they're never going to bring it up in the future of this Titan franchise. They're probably never going to bring it up again, that Ghidorah was an alien.
Well, or either that, or it'll be fodder for the sequel. I mean, you know, there is such a thing as Mecha Ghidorah.
You know what? We could talk about them setting up the next Godzilla sequel.
Okay. Now, I totally lost my train of thought. Okay, so I guess since we're talking about characters, I guess let's shift into the casting of this film, and I want to start by giving a major shout out to Millie Bobby Brown as Madison Russell. For those of you who think that name is familiar, that she was 11 in Stranger Things, and I absolutely loved her in that series. And I thought, man, if they just gave her a speaking role, I bet she'd knock it out of the park. And this movie proved it. She was absolutely great in this movie. I loved every scene that she was in.
She was just so wonderful in this. I honestly, the whole time I was thinking, she's so good in this. Because everything she's doing is such a subtle thing. Like, a lot of the characters were set up to be sort of very obvious who they are and what they're about. And she's like a little more nuanced of a character, because she's this young girl whose parents have separated. They've been through this tragedy. So she's got this little bit of like, obviously she's suffering from the separation of her family being torn apart, and the things that she's experienced. But she's also young, and you know, she's almost sort of has to parent her parents a little bit. Because of their personalities and the way that they don't deal with their own problems correctly. But she's also a kid who gets scared and, you know, wants to believe her parents when they tell her things, because they don't believe that, you know, she doesn't believe that her mother would ever lie to her, you know? So it's this beautiful blend of maturity and naivete that just, she's such a talented young actress. I just can't believe it.
Can we talk about how well she emotes in this film? Because you were talking about how child actors kind of hit or miss. One of the things that usually bugs me about child actors is a lot of them, it feels like they're just reading their lines off a card. but Millie Brown's just her the way she uses her face and her body stance to convey what her character's feeling in that moment, like that's her season 1 Stranger Things chops coming into play. And the way that she just emotes and conveys emotion in this film is just absolutely great. And I just casting her in this movie was genius, and I'm so happy that they're bringing her back for whatever the third Godzilla film is going to be.
Yeah, I don't even care what the contents are of the next. If I get to see monsters and her again, she really is. She's got such a great career ahead of her if she chooses to keep on pursuing acting. And I just think, when you heard stories about her from the first season of Stranger Things, like, she has so much guts to do the kinds of things and the kinds of productions that she does. Oh God, I wish she was my little sister or something. Like, oh, she's so great.
Okay.
The rest of the cast doesn't even matter. I mean, they do, but.
Well, let's give them some time in the spotlights. Let's move on to.
Oh, by the way, speaking of Stranger Things, did you notice that the scientist who gets totally killed right off the bat when they're experimenting, they're doing the Mothra thing, and then like an explosion kills a bunch of scientists, and there was like the one who had been talking to them. I can't think of the character's name, but he was the teacher in Stranger Things.
Oh no, I did not catch that.
I watched that scene going, I know that guy. Who the fuck is that guy? And I had to like think about it. And then I threw on an episode of Stranger Things while I was getting my tires rotated yesterday. And I was like, oh, that guy. I was so excited by my discovery. I had to tell you all, please let us commence talking about other people.
All right. So let's move on to Kyle Chandler as Dr. Mark Russell. And like I said, we were discussing kind of the plot of this film. This movie was kind of setting him up to be the one that went over the deep end, and a lot of that had to do with his performance as this kind of wounded father who just wants to kind of move on with his life and get past the disaster and not have to deal with it anymore. And I like that I like his arc in this movie because they did one of the tropes that so often happens with this type of character is like, okay, this thing happened. I now absolutely hate the cause of this thing. Okay, well now we need this thing, so now I'm its number one champion. And I liked it, even though he sort of came around and was like, okay, look, we need Godzilla to fight off Ghidorah and stop what's going on. He never actually abandons his dislike of the Titans, which I felt was a refreshing change pace, because it shows that, he has a reason to not like Godzilla and to not like the Titans, and he never lets go of that, but he's also pragmatic enough to know that, look, needs must sometimes. And even at the end of the film, he still hasn't really abandoned his dislike of the Titans. And I think that he's probably going to be sort of, now that Serizawa's gone, he's probably going to be sort of the devil on the shoulder for Monarch, being like, okay, we got to figure out a way to contain these, or at the least keep them safe. At best, I think he might still actually want to take a shot at Godzilla, but that's something to see for the sequel. But I really liked his character in this film as this sort of, he's not really in over his head, but his whole goal throughout the movie is to save is to rescue his family, and just kind of try and regain some sense of normalcy in his life. And I really loved his character.
Yeah, he's definitely a character who, we have so many movies with Jason Bournes and characters like that who are so like talented and perfect at everything and always right about everything. And it gets sort of monotonous when all these characters are just so good and perfect at everything. And here's a guy who is wrong. He's wrong about a lot of stuff. And he learns his lessons the hard way. And to me, that's kind of refreshing that he's not just some, every movie has its like fucking super genius who's always right about everything. And, he's just not that. He knows a lot of stuff. But he's putting his trust in the wrong person. He's, not relying on Godzilla when he should be, but like everything is completely reasonable. He's wrong for all the right reasons, in ways that are very logical and fact-based. And then when he's proven wrong, he changes. And that's You're right. He's got a nice character arc. It's really cheesy at a lot of times, but it's a monster movie. It's what you're gonna get.
Yeah. And then you have I know I'm gonna butcher this last name, Vera Farmiga as Emma Russell, Madison's mother and Mark's ex-wife. And I think I kind of gave all my thoughts on her in discussing her character tropes. So, Kat, what did you think of her character?
I actually enjoyed her quite a bit. I like her as an actress a lot. I think she does a lot of really good subtle expressions. I didn't see the plot twist coming personally because I just didn't. I'm not usually very good at picking up on things like that. So I was quite surprised, especially because I've never seen her. I haven't seen her in too many things, but I've never seen her as a villain before. So I was quite surprised that they were going to pick her to be the main adversary, or the main human villain anyway. But I think first off, she does Crazy Eyes pretty good. But I also like the way that even if you don't like her trope, I really like the way that she wasn't like batshit crazy. She was very, reserved in her reasoning was very logically founded. It was very, she's holding back all of the emotion that the character was having, like it was just bubbling to the surface, but she wasn't like ranting and raving and screaming like a lot of women would be portrayed. She was just very thoughtful and logical. And she mostly just, looked resolute or defeated most of the time. Like she's just trying to make the world a better place, in a way that obviously is built off of a place of pain and hurt and, not a place of empathy for the goddamn human race. But
she kind of took some cues from Thanos in a way, kind of like a villainous character who you can see the method to their madness, but the method is itself horrifying.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's actually a really great description. She's doing what she's doing for a reason. She's not a lunatic, but it is, absurd to think that would ever work. She's grounded in an ideal and not a reality.
Okay. And then next up, we can't let this pass without talking about Ken Watanabe as the Dr. Ishiro Serizawa, and I absolutely loved his arc in this movie. I feel like it came to a really beautiful conclusion. I've yet to see a movie with Ken Watanabe in it that I did not enjoy his role, and I loved sort of what was I'm looking for, the humble wisdom of his character, because as you watch this film, it's pretty clear that he's the only one who's got his head completely on the ball here, who knows what needs to happen, but he's very, sort of, he doesn't steal this. He doesn't. How can I put this? He doesn't steal the show, but the show kind of naturally gravitates toward him, if that makes any sense. Like he's the driving force of every scene he's in, but he's not like a William Shatner hammy about it. And I loved his arc in this film, where he's basically been coming to bat for Godzilla and the Titans throughout all of this movie. And I love that he finally got that moment at the end, that heroic sacrifice, where he finally got to meet what was essentially his idol at that stage of the film. And I just thought that whole scene was just gorgeously shot and gorgeously done. And I'm not gonna lie, I cried.
I did too. I didn't think that Ken Watanabe's character, Serizawa?
Yeah.
Sure, Serizawa? I thought his character was maybe a little bit cuckoo bonker. And maybe it's just me, but he is there as the lone voice championing Godzilla as the savior of humanity. Most people would find that crazy. Because Godzilla is a big fucking monster that they have no real reason to believe gives a shit about the human race. And the way he talks about Godzilla makes him sound like humanity's champion. And that is a highly illogical way of looking previous film. So he gets on the main character Mark's case about not liking Godzilla, and there's not a lot of empathy coming from Serizawa to Mark, because Mark had his entire family and his life destroyed by Godzilla. Not Godzilla directly, but you get the idea.
Yeah.
And he, Serizawa doesn't really care about that pain. He gets upset that Mark doesn't believe in Godzilla and would rather see all of the big giant monsters dead. And honestly, that is a very logical way to look at giant monsters. And I thought that Serizawa was just a little heavy on the Godzilla's going to save us bit. But inevitably, he was always right. So it doesn't matter what I think, because he was right.
Well, see, I interpreted Serizawa's philosophy as not necessarily one of like, oh, Godzilla's going to save us all, but more like, look, Godzilla is a part of this world. It's part of the natural order, and we have to kind of exist in balance with that, which is, and this is where I show my lack of knowledge of Eastern religions and philosophies. But is that a Buddhist or a Shinto thing?
Maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah.
Because every creature working in every creature, everything in the world having a function is a very Shinto thing, I think.
Yeah. Which given Serizawa's character is in fact Japanese, I felt he was kind of channeling that. But that just may be me reading, that may be my misinterpretation or whatever. And then let's see, another character we got to talk about. Wait,
before we totally leave Ken Watanabe behind, I did have a thought as he was volunteering to go in and take the nuke to Godzilla. I thought that could have been, and if it was, very beautiful, an homage to when Fukushima went off. After I don't remember what year that was, like 2013 or something. It's been a while now, but when the Fukushima reactor went haywire after the big tsunami in Japan, it was these older workers who were volunteering to go in to the and try and work on the reactor, because they knew that the radiation is going to kill me anyway. Why not if the radiation is going to kill somebody, why not be me, who's already past my prime, and why put young people at risk when they have lives ahead of them? And I thought that might have been a nod to Fukushima, with this older guy who has, he's past his prime, more or less. And it's just him protecting the world and saving the younger minds from, dying painfully of radiation or, whatever. I thought that might have been an homage. If it wasn't, fine, but if it was, then it was really well done.
You know what? I didn't even think about that, but that does fit, because I saw it as again being a throwback to the original 1954 Godzilla, where the scientist character in that film, again also named Serizawa, took the oxygen destroyer to Godzilla's hidey hole to destroy him. But no, given how they set it up, where the radiation surrounding Godzilla will kill whoever goes in there, I can definitely see some parallels between that and the Fukushima disaster. So you're seeing something that I hadn't even considered, and that I don't know, that I'll have to check the DVD commentary, but if that was an intentional send up, then yeah, no, you're right, that was excellently done.
Yeah, and it was nice for him, for Watanabe, to get such a lovely send-off for his character. I hope in the next film it turns out he had a daughter the whole time. Now we're going to have this, badass chick scientist come in, but even if we don't, it would, he got such a nice send-off. And I don't know if you've seen any of the photos of Ken Watanabe on the red carpet playing with the big Godzilla model, but he clearly had the time of his life making these films.
Indeed. All right, so the final major human character we got to talk about is Dance as Alan Jonah, the leader of the eco-terrorists.
Oh, yes.
And I'll let you go first on this because I kind of don't really have a whole lot to say about it.
I thought that Dance's character was tragically understated. He is such a brilliant actor. If you've ever seen him on Game of Thrones as Tywin Lannister, you know that he is capable of so very, very much as an actor. And, you know, for him to play such a one-note character, basically, you know, he had some little subtleties to him. Him trying to entertain Maddie, Millie Bobby Brown's character, and her just giving him the finger was amazing. But otherwise, he's very like point and shoot kind of a character. His motivations are interesting. You know, he's an eco-terrorist and he traffics like kaiju DNA. All very, very weird. I got his motivations out of it, but you know, I just could have used so much more of him because I love this actor. And I guess now we could talk about the potential sequel because Charles at the end of there's a post-credit scene.
Is there?
Yes.
Damn
Did you not see it? You didn't see it? Oh no. Okay, so there's a post-credit scene. If you haven't seen the movie but are listening to our review, please stay for the post-credit scene. Which is Charles Dance's character. He has made out of it fine. He is absolutely A-okay after the events of the film. He is in Isla del Mar, whatever the name of that particular site was, and there's some really shady people who have one of the heads of Ghidorah. And they're basically like, look, we don't know what we can do with this, but we're willing to sell it. And Charles Dance is like, I'll take it. And that's it. That's it. So I don't know that they're setting up that, like, I don't think that's the setup for Godzilla versus King Kong. I think it's a setup for another, like, just straight Godzilla film.
Well, they've already announced that there's going to be a third straight Godzilla film. So now that I know that they might be setting up Mecha Ghidorah, I don't know.
That's what I was thinking.
But we'll have to see. But now I'm a little, because it's not a Marvel movie. I didn't expect there would be a post-credit sequence, but now the infection has spread.
I was literally in the theater on Wikipedia looking up who some of the actors were, and then I came across Charles Dance and it said in the post-credit scene, but we're staying.
All right, so I guess since we've gone through all the important cast numbers, let's start talking about the presentation of this film. And I have got to give a shout out to the cinematography of this film because there were some masterfully done shots showing the majesty of some of the Titans. I think the standout one was Mothra under the waterfall where her wings unfurl. I just thought that was an absolutely gorgeous shot, and I would love to have like just a frame of that printed out and put up on my wall because that was just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, everything about Mothra was beautiful. Oh, I loved her so much.
All right. So, what did you think of the presentation of this movie?
There were times where I thought Ghidorah did not look real enough. I don't know what I was expecting because I've never seen a Godzilla film with Ghidorah in it. But there was times where I thought it just looked a little, I don't know what the right word is, but like maybe plasticky or something. Like his heads, like just specifically his heads didn't always look on the ball for me, but I still loved it. So, like I didn't even care. Godzilla, I thought, okay, so did Godzilla look tired the whole time or was it just me?
I wouldn't say I wouldn't say tired, but maybe more like I'm sick of your shit.
To me, he looked like he was like, I can't believe I have to fucking deal. Like, he just looked so tired and done with everything to me. I don't know if that was, like, a subtle change from his previous design, like his previous model, which, hey, shout out to TJ Storm, who is the motion capture for Godzilla, because what a bang-up job. We're so far from guys in suits, and now we have guys in mocap suits doing all of the actions for these creatures, because I think most of the monsters had mocap artists, like human mocap artists, and isn't that wild?
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, I'd be interested to see how they did the behind the scenes stuff, like particularly for Ghidorah and how they did the mocap for him.
Yes.
I want to know how they got those 3 heads.
Ah, so good. I really, really liked all. They just looked so incredible. And again, having very little knowledge, but I've seen stills and I've seen clips of all of the monsters before, and they were all just so incredible to look at. It's like you said, there was a lot of really good cinematography, I guess. Really amazing money shots. I think there was a couple of really good Ghidorah scenes where just the lighting on him, you really get like, yes, this is the king of the monsters. And then you get a really good Godzilla shot and you're like, this is the king of the monsters. Like, they're just, all the lighting in it was so good. They really went out of their way to create interesting lighting. Especially with all the monsters having these amazing attacks that are separately colored, so that you could really distinguish them in battle and everything. You're like, no, the monsters were just perfect, basically.
Yeah, I want to talk a bit about the lighting that you brought up, because one of the issues I had with the 2014 Godzilla film was that it was, because everything was like that same slate of gray and dust. It was really hard to see what was going on in the monster fights. It almost felt like a Michael Bay film at some time. But I had no trouble following the action in this film and telling who was doing what. And yeah, you're right. The lighting in this film was actually really great. And everybody likes to toot the horn of the scene of Ghidorah on the mountain with the cross in the foreground.
That was.
And that is a nice shot, but I think that my favorite Ghidorah shot is actually the one where he takes Godzilla way up into the sort of the eye of the storm and the clouds surrounding them. And I absolutely loved that shot and thought it was absolutely beautiful, because it sort of, for this one moment, you have these 2 gigantic monsters, but they look really like tiny, but at the same time there's like just sort of a terrible majesty to the whole scene.
Terrible majesty is a really excellent description for these monsters. Every scene with Mothra is gorgeous. They did such an excellent job of making what could have been a very scary, as a rule, we don't like insects. Like, even moths are kind of scary to us, because they get in your fucking face when you're trying to get inside the house and stuff, and and for something like Mothra to come off as being kind of sweet, she's kind of sweet and beautiful and majestic, and you're like, that is such a wonderful thing to convey through her design. But also, she's goddamn deadly. Oh gosh. And then Rodan, I have to. I loved Rodan. Because I almost felt sorry for him, because I too can identify with being really cranky, just woken up. And like, I've just felt bad for him, because like, somebody woke him up, he didn't ask for this shit, and then as soon as he wakes up, there are people like throwing bombs in his face, and he didn't ask for that either. And then as soon as he's up and about, he doesn't have control over the fact that he's just a fire creature that's like accidentally killing everybody as he's flying over, because he's trying to get away from all these things shooting him. And then upper management Ghidorah there is just like, hey, go terrorize everywhere. And he's like, okay, I guess.
I ain't had coffee yet.
That's what I was thinking. I was like, how about we give Rodan a really cup of coffee and then let him decide what he wants to do with his life. But I did like that when all of the Titans are bowing to the King Godzilla at the end, Godzilla kind of gives Rodan a look like, I got my eyes on you, asshole.
Yeah. So another thing that I got to give, because you ever notices this, but the music, the score to this movie was so phenomenal. Did you catch? Well, I guess having not been a Godzilla fan, you wouldn't. But there were a lot of musical homages to the original 1954 Godzilla theme, with that sort of the Japanese chants and the drums.
Yeah, I don't know any of the original, but I definitely picked up on, oh, this is Godzilla's theme, because it had like the chanting and the drumming and everything. It definitely sounded almost like religious, like a religious Buddhist ceremony of some kind. Yeah, I definitely picked up on his theme. I really enjoyed, it gets you pumped up when he comes out and you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I love how the music in the moments that we're kind of supposed to be in awe of the monsters, it swells up and it's epic and it's awesome and huge, but it's not overpowering where it takes away from the greatness of the creatures themselves. And I love that balance that the film struck with its score in this movie.
And with any good score, it does get quiet at the moments where it needs to be nice and quiet so that it can build up the suspense. Because there was at least one or two good jump scares in there, and I was hooked. Like, I was sold on those jump scares. I didn't see, but I was waiting for something to happen, because something would get really quiet or like it would drop any music, and then. I think Mothra had a theme, maybe, because there was like this very like majestic music. I don't know any other word. Like, I just remember when she came out, like the last time, I'm thinking, something very ethereal playing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I caught that too. I don't know if they brought back Mothra's theme from the original movies or not. I'd have to look that up. The only one that I recognized offhand was the Godzilla theme, because I had just on a lark watched the original 1954 Godzilla film a couple hours before I went to go see this movie.
I feel like there were chimes involved, and chimes always something ethereal is happening. Gosh, I can't wait to go see it again so I can pay a little more attention to the soundtrack this time.
All right. Well, we're kind of running short on time here, so let's start wrapping things up. Let's talk about some standout moments. What were some moments of this film that really stood out to you that you particularly enjoyed?
I liked any scene where there was just some masterful bit of lighting to light up one of the monsters, so that you could really get that powerful effect of seeing what did you say, the
terrible majesty
of them. I really liked. It was so cheesy, but I loved the moment where Ghidorah is getting ready to just come down and finish off Emma, and she just goes, what does she say? Like, the king. Long live the king. And then almost like Ghidorah knows what she's saying, but it's really that he's hearing Godzilla come up. And then he just like whips his head around and rah, and the fight resumes. I really loved that moment because it was cheesy and predictable, but it had the impact on me that I think the filmmakers wanted. I liked seeing Ghidorah in the ice the first time. I liked Rodan coming out of the volcano. Was really spectacular looking. Also, like the suspense building of that, where it's like it took him a couple of seconds to get out of the volcano. I liked everything with Mothra. She was just so beautiful. Like when Mothra fucking runs Rodan right through, right when you think she's about to get dead, and you're like, oh shit, yes, that was great. Those are, I think, probably my favorite moments. None of them were people moments except for the one. There were good people moments, but like the monster moments were what we were there for.
All right, I think my favorite moments were Serizawa's goodbye to Godzilla. I thought that I got really teary-eyed at that moment. I'm going to say it again. I absolutely loved the scene where Mothra comes out of her cocoon under the waterfall, and you get that beautiful long shot of her unfurling her wings. I thought that was just absolutely gorgeous. And then a moment that made me chuckle, but at the same time, like, it's awesome because it's such a Godzilla thing to do, is when Godzilla finally kills off Ghidorah. He's basically destroyed the whole body except for one head, which he's holding the neck in his mouth like a strand of spaghetti. And he's like just chomping down on it before doing the fire breath up through the neck and destroying the head. You kind of see him give off this little kind of electric burp afterwards. I absolutely loved that. I thought that because that's such a Godzilla thing to do. You got to have the epic moments, but you also got to have just like the little silly cheese moments too. So that's so to kind of have to start wrapping things up. So this is a part of the show where we give our final rating on the film. So as always, our ratings from best to worst are see it now, wait for matinee, wait for DVD, wait for cable, don't even bother, and Brian's rating, fuck this movie. So Kat, what is your final rating for Godzilla King of the Monsters?
Oh my god, if you like kaiju films of any kind, if you just want to see big monsters, just go see this film already. I'm definitely going to go see it again, probably this weekend, if I'm lucky, because I really want to see it again and catch some stuff that I didn't see before. If you're not super invested in the Godzilla franchise or kaiju, but you want a good popcorn film, go see this during the matinee and get a cheap ticket. I didn't, but you can. That is my rating.
All right, and I'm also going to say see it now. I absolutely love this film. It was everything that the 2014 film should have been and more. And this is a definite step up. And now that I've seen what they can do with this, I'm really looking forward to Godzilla vs. Kong and the next films in the MonsterVerse, as they're calling it. So that's all the time that we have for Nerd of the Third Power this week. Thank you as always for tuning in. We will see you next week when we discuss Carmen Sandiego, the history of the franchise, and the new Netflix series. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So we will see you guys next week. As always, I'm Dr. Gonzo.
I'm the cat.
See you next week. Taka, play us out.
I will take this time to shift around and make noise in my chair that sounds vaguely like farts.